Hey everyone, welcome to The New Populist. I'm Dave Brown. If you're new to this channel, please like and subscribe. Today, I want to talk about Biden's pick for office of the Comptroller of the Treasury, a not very well known position within our government, but a important position nonetheless. And this lady's name is Sally Omarova. She was born in Kazakhstan. She was educated at the University of Moscow on a Lenin scholarship before coming to the United States and getting her master's degree and doctorate. And I actually did a video about her before because she is a huge proponent of a thing called the National Investment Authority. And if you want to see the whole video, go ahead and check it out. I'll put a link in the description. But she recently got in trouble, or was roundly thumped by the conservative media, for saying that she wanted to see oil and gas companies go bankrupt. Well, in this interview she gave, it's about an hour long and I watched the whole thing. She makes these comments and that's what, Fox News and other outlets focused on. But if you actually looked at the greater context of what she was talking about, it was actually much worse than just saying that she hoped that these businesses go bankrupt. So I want to play a few clips from this interview because she said some things that are actually pretty startling, and we on the right really need to pay attention. She hasn't been confirmed yet. She keeps saying these things that garner attention, and I think that it could end up derailing her nomination. The best thing she could do is stop giving interviews, because when she says things like this, it makes it hard for people like Joe Manchin in the Senate to want to vote for her confirmation. So in our interest, I hope she keeps on saying these things because we do not want her running this department. So I want to play this first clip because right now we're in this position where we're seeing our country go through this tumultuous time of inflation. We just got numbers today from last year. The consumer price index, we are up 6.2% from last year. And that's the greatest rise in 30 years. So we're seeing this inflation, and at some point, here's a scary thing, at some point the Federal Reserve has to act by raising interest rates. And when this happens, we're going to see some pretty scary economic things happening. And she alludes to this. Listen to what she says right here.
So why do we need a new public institution? I think everybody understands the scope and the scale of the task that we are facing today, with the kind of economic transformation that this country needs in order to get out of the sort of post-COVID recession or economic depression kind of on our horizon.
So according to Saleh Omarova, on the horizon, we are facing not an economic recession, but an economic depression. So this is still, according to her, about to occur. So any idea that we're going to move out of this inflation and things will be okay, I think we can go ahead and get rid of that idea. We shut down the economy for several weeks, if not longer. We laid off millions of people. We printed out an insane amount of money. There is no way for us to just sort of inflate our way out of this by printing money and think that there will not be some sort of repercussions. There's going to be a repercussion to our actions over the last year and a half. We are going to see an economic recession, and in her words, an economic depression that is on the horizon. And this is important because a lot of the left's ideas can't be implemented unless there's some sort of chaos. When things go well, the left can't get their ideas across. They take advantage of disasters, of catastrophes, in order to implement their agenda. Listen to what she says here.
What do you see as kind of the political path forward here? And assuming that the National Investment Authority could come to be, how to protect it from capture by the interests that it would be kind of crafted to hold at bay?
Yeah, these are great questions, of course. Well, I always hesitate to answer questions about the political path. First of all, I'm the the least politically savvy person probably you would ever meet. So I don't know what the political which political arguments really would win in what circumstances. Generally speaking, however, politics is fickle. We all know that, and political winds change, and so it depends on how bad the situation gets in the U.S. Economically speaking, and so there might be a shift in the appetite and the readiness, psychological readiness, and ideological readiness to accept certain solutions over other solutions. There might be such a shift. There is probably a way of kind of messaging, right? The same idea of that sort of heavy hands-on equity type investment to people who are afraid of the government too heavily getting involved in the actual credit allocation, the picking winners and losers. I'm sure there is a way of messaging that might actually bring them on board. But ultimately, I think it is sort of in the United States, we are kind of working against that ingrained ideological fear of getting the government too much in. And of course, historically, and as a practical matter, it's not true. The federal government has always been right there inside the market. What is it that the Federal Reserve does that, other than, buying and selling financial assets to financial market players? Like, what does that mean, right? But so that's the politics of it.
So, in our own words, the public's acceptance of a national investment authority depends partly on how bad the situation gets in the United States. And then she rightfully points out that, unlike in the Soviet Union where she's from, us Americans, ingrained in our DNA is resistance toward government intervention into the private markets and the economy. And she points out the Federal Reserve System as being an example of this such intervention. Now, the Federal Reserve was established in 1913, not 1776. So for a large part of our history, we did not have a Federal Reserve System. And depending on who you talk to, the Federal Reserve System may have caused more problems than it actually solved. But let's ignore that for now. There are two more clips I want to play because in order for us to understand this comment about oil and gas industries, I want us to first better understand the National Investment Authority and its sort of synergy with the Federal Reserve System, because with understanding those two things together, it gives us the better context to understand why that comment about the oil and gas industry was so pernicious. So watch these next two clips.
So for whatever reasons, we all know what happens is that private market actors do not step up to finance the kind of large-scale, long-term, high-risk public infrastructure projects precisely because of those time horizons and the risks that they consider too high for them to be able to take them on. Public authorities are hamstrung by various political budgetary considerations and so forth. So what we need is a new institutional actor that can actually step into that void and bridge that gap and sort of act within markets alongside private market actors, but also be subject to various democratic accountability levers, and to act in the interests of all of us as a whole, the public interest, not just in the interest of a few shareholders of a few private capital providers, as most institutional investors currently do. So what we need is the NIA as an institutional focus, institutional platform that would become the tool of this public allocation of capital for the purpose of spurring economic growth that would be structurally balanced, that would be equitable, inclusive, and would actually serve the longer term goals that are currently not being serviced in private financial markets. There is not enough money on that day, for example, in the bank account of the NIA to repay back to those limited partners. The proposal envisions the liquidity backup by giving the NIA access to the Federal Reserve, and to be able to borrow from the Fed in order to basically cover its obligations to the limited partners on that day for that fund, right? And then repay the Fed in future as it sort of as kind of its portfolio gets replenished through the flow of revenues from other projects, or when certain projects get sold off from the NIA's portfolio when the NIA is ready to do so. So putting the Fed behind the NIA, behind Nikki Mack as an asset manager, is sort of what the Fed is really for in many ways, and what we use it for. Except now we use it ad hoc, and we use it in a way that basically backs up a lot of financial assets that do not necessarily generate the types of public return that we need them to generate. Now we're going to redirect the Fed's power, the power of the Fed's balance sheet, to stand behind the NIA.
So think about this. The National Investment Authority would be implemented during a time of economic chaos that would allegedly help to grow the economy. But she's admitting that they wouldn't necessarily invest in things that were profitable, especially in the short term. They would invest in things like affordable housing and things related to climate change. And the goal would not be just profits per se, but equity. How exactly does that move us out of an economic recession or depression? How does that grow the economy? Furthermore, she points out that these projects that would not make money would be bailed out by the Federal Reserve System. So if you invested in these projects and these projects were garbage, that's okay. We go to the Fed, we get our bailout. And she also refers to going to the Treasury, if necessary as well, to get money if these projects aren't profitable. So we're moving money from profitable things that go to the economy, to her National Investment Authority that would invest in things that were equitable, that increased social welfare, and sort of nebulous things like that don't actually have a dollar sign next to them. It's social benefit. And so when these things fail, it's okay. We're going to go to the Federal Reserve System and get our bailout. Now, understanding how this National Investment Authority now works, listen to the comment on oil and gas.
But also, more importantly, Nikki Mack will be able, the NIA will be able to negotiate equity stakes in private enterprise that receives that public aid, be it a part of the systemic bailout or be it part of, for example, individualized restructuring help, for example, for certain troubled industries and firms that are in transitioning. And here what I'm thinking about is primarily coal industry and oil and gas industry. A lot of the smaller players in that industry are going to probably go bankrupt in short order. At least we want them to go bankrupt if we want to tackle climate change, right? But that creates a lot of this sort of loss of jobs, a lot of displacement and economic fallback that we cannot afford really. So Nikki Mack could actually become the kind of equity investor at that point, taking over management of those companies and basically leading them through restructuring to a new technological basis and to a new technological business model.
Now that we have the context, we can see that her comments are much worse than just saying she wants these companies to fail. She wants a national investment authority to step in, buy these companies up, repackage them, and have them produce a product that the left thinks is good for society. And the irony is we're taking companies that are not profitable and replacing them with other companies that are not profitable, except for these unprofitable companies that are quote unquote good for society. They'll be subsidized by the US taxpayer. And that brings us to two other issues. One is, why are these companies not profitable? We know the left likes to attack certain industries they don't like through regulation. And if we look at the Biden administration in these last few months, they have attacked the energy sector. So think about that. They attack these oil companies, these gas companies they don't like, cause them to become unprofitable, and then have their National Investment Authority sweep on in and gobble them up. And then second, during this pandemic, we've seen these mega corporations make more money than they ever have before. And she mentions that she wants to take out these small businesses. Notice she didn't say ExxonMobil or these mega corporations. She says small businesses. So during a time where, during this pandemic, there has been historic losses to small business, they've been decimated. What is she proposing? A national investment authority to attack these small businesses in sectors of the economy that she doesn't like. So pretty brutal. National Investment Authority sounds pretty Soviet, and that's what it amounts to, a takeover of large swaths of the economy that the left think needs to go the way of the dodo bird. Now, we've been warned in the future, as she points out, if there is an economic depression, that's when they will try to enact this National Investment Authority by slipping it into some sort of legislation in the future. And the problem is, this subject is kind of a boring subject, and you have to really drill down into it to really understand what they're doing. And my fear is that because of that, it may slip through a lot of people who don't really understand what it is. And by the time they do, it may be too late. So we're aware of it. If we see it in the future popping up in Congress, let's make sure we're calling our representatives, our senators. Let's sound the alarms to make sure that this National Investment Authority never comes to fruition, because now that we understand what it is, this is really a pretty nasty attack on the private sector, when what amounts to is a gigantic takeover of a large swath of our economy. So be on the lookout for that. We've been warned. That's it for now. Again, if you're new to this channel, please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.